In the days following George Floyd's death, protests and riots erupted as law enforcement struggled to regain order. Now, the city of Minneapolis, its police chief, and other state leaders face a number of lawsuits connected to the unrest.
Protesters claim police targeted them. One journalist covering the chaos lost her eyesight. Tonight, WCCO's Jennifer Mayerle explains what that reporter and others are fighting for now.
The streets of Minneapolis were fraught with emotion in the days after the death of George Floyd. Thousands made their voices heard, protesting police violence. While crowds gathered, marched, and mourned, they were sometimes met with pepper spray, tear gas, and non-lethal munitions. It intensified with looting and rioting. The 3rd precinct taken over and burned. A curfew went into place, exempting the media, among others. In the midst of chaos, journalists responded to cover.
So I'm a photojournalist and a writer, and one of my beats has been civic unrest, urban unrest.
Linda Tirado traveled from Tennessee to report on what was unfolding in Minneapolis and experienced what she calls unprecedented levels of violence. She says these were the last pictures she took before being struck by police.
I was hit in the face, my goggles came off. I had a laceration on my eye, so it was, a lot of blood, a lot of tear gas. I closed my eyes. I started yelling, "I'm pressed, I'm pressed."
Protesters drove her to the hospital where she underwent surgery. Tirado was left permanently blind on her left side. She filed a federal lawsuit against the city, police chief, union president, DPS commissioner, and state patrol colonel.
It was egregious. It was unnecessary, and that's the reason I brought the lawsuit. I have medical bills that I do need to cover, but more importantly, I wanted to make sure that this didn't happen again.
Jared Goyette signed on with an ACLU class action lawsuit.
Journalists were being, like the evidence would suggest, directly targeted, or at least recklessly put in danger by police in a way that prevented us from doing our job.
He took this video of a person on the ground just before he says he too was shot in the face.
When I got hit right here by whatever the police were firing, I had weeks of, my eye was swollen shut. I was lucky that I did get treatment because that could have had permanent damage.
His lawsuit alleges the police actions violated the 1st, 4th, and 14th Amendments, and it lays out other journalists the ACLU says were tear gassed, pepper sprayed, shot in the face with rubber bullets, threatened at gunpoint, and arrested without cause. Goyette is looking for accountability.
I'm hoping that both the mayor and the police chief take real concrete actions as opposed to just apologies that aren't really worth much, to be honest.
ACLU attorney Terry Nelson.
People should not have to fear going out to protest police violence.
The nonprofit that fights for civil liberties filed lawsuits on behalf of journalists and protesters.
We hope for systems change. We hope that police will change their practices, they will get more training, and approach protests with more respect for people's First Amendment rights.
Protester Nakima Levy-Armstrong says she watched as conditions deteriorated and adds there were no warnings to disperse.
They were exaggerated, militarized responses to what were largely nonviolent, peaceful protesters. And I just found it to be unacceptable.
She said her voice hasn't returned to normal after being tear gassed, but this protester class action lawsuit is about something larger.
I urge people to stand in solidarity with those of us who are filing this lawsuit to protect all of our rights to freedom of speech.
Jennifer Mayerle, WCCO 4 News.
Another lawsuit filed just last week also names Mayor Jacob Frey. The city attorney declined to comment. Police Union President Bob Kroll said he had nothing to do with this, saying that he is included purely out of spite. The Department of Public Safety would not comment on the allegations, but did say the agency defends and supports citizens' constitutional right to First Amendment expression when exercised in a lawful and nonviolent manner. And it recognizes the importance of media in covering civil unrest.